My name is Solomon Trend. I am a claims adjuster. I'm sure you've never heard of us. We are the clearinghouse for hundreds of small independent insurance companies. I've been with the same company for 22 years and never considered changing jobs. The work is dull, but suits me perfectly. Don't get me wrong, I don't feel unhappy or oppressed. I'm just not very motivated. My personal life mirrors my career in many ways. I've been married for 23 years. I have twin daughters, Rose and Iris, who are seniors at Albright College. I also have a 4-bedroom house and a huge mortgage that paid for the girls' college education. My wife, Marcy, has never worked and has no desire to. Our income has been sufficient, but not more than that, though I managed to save around $40,000 over the years. My marriage has always been lackluster and remains so. I expected and hoped for more. I've tried all the usual tricks to liven things up, but nothing seemed to work. Today I found out why. It was a typical and very boring day. Just after lunch, I received a call. It was my wife's phone. She rarely calls me at work, so I was curious. "Hello Solomon, old buddy, how are you?" "Yeah, who is this and why are you using my wife's phone?" "It's Brad Solomon. Brad Mercer. Remember me? I'm the guy you stole Marcy from about 25 years ago." Of course, I remembered. I didn't steal her. He left town, and I picked her up after he left. I would never steal another guy's girl. As far as I could tell, she was a fair catch. "Yeah, I remember, but I'd still like to know why you're using her phone." "Well, Solomon, here's the thing. I was in town on business and gave her a call. We had lunch together, one thing led to another, and now we're in my hotel room. She's in the shower right now, so I thought I'd chat with you." "What are you talking about?" "She said she wanted to freshen up before heading home, so you wouldn't be upset." "Solomon, you want to hear something funny? Listen to this." There was a brief pause, and then I heard the sound of some kind of engine running. I couldn't make out what it was. "Did you hear that?" "Solomon, that was a hairdryer. Can you believe it? I invited her out for lunch, and she brought a mini hairdryer with her. What does that tell you?" "Solomon, what do you want, Brad? Why did you call?" "I just wanted to thank you for stealing my girl. How does it feel to know I'm still better than you? Maybe you're married to her, but her heart still belongs to me. Otherwise, why would she be here?" I hung up and blocked the number. I didn't need to know anything more. That call answered many questions I'd had over the past couple of years. It took me less than an hour to quit my job and transfer my salary and severance to my brother in Huntsville. I went to the bank and paid off all the bills. I didn't pay any credit cards or the mortgage. I also mailed my brother first class. I just finished loading all my stuff into my car when Marcy arrived. "Solomon, what's going on? Why is your car packed with stuff?" I was sitting at the kitchen table finishing my coffee when she placed several grocery bags on the counter. "Oh, you noticed?" There was a moment of silence as she started unpacking the bags. She stopped halfway and turned around. "Are you going to tell me what's going on?" She waited, suspicious. I set my cup down and approached the counter, digging into her purse. I pulled out a bright red metal mini hairdryer. I just held it up and waited for a reaction or an explanation. She froze for a moment and then sighed deeply, quietly leaving the room. 5 minutes later, I was on the road to Huntsville. My brother Bob and his wife Barbara were glad to see me. It had been years since we last got together. Bob and I chattered a bit while Barbara cooked dinner. I was able to explain the whole situation without much emotional outburst, which seemed to impress him. I was very tired from the long drive, so I went to bed right after dinner. When I woke up, Bob was already gone. He worked at the Toyota plant north of Huntsville. Barbara offered to drive me around and help me settle in. It was straightforward. I got new driver's licenses and arranged for mail delivery to Bob's house. Barbara took me to CarMax and within 20 minutes, I had a check for a Honda car. Once Bob finished work, we headed to the Rocket City Trailer Center. Barbara and I had lunch at Olive Garden. I wasn't too picky, and after a few hours, I finally settled on a small Rialta. The next day, it was ready for me. The sales rep spent a few hours explaining everything I needed to know about operating and maintaining my new home on wheels. I took everything as is, except for installing 4 new tires. Barbara gladly helped me set up all the necessary household items, and Bob put together a small set of tools found in his cluttered garage. The next morning, I disappeared. I had no plan. I had no destination. Whatever happened, happened. Wherever I ended up, that was where I was meant to be. It didn't mean I wasn't prepared for surprises. I was easygoing, but not careless or foolish. I avoided traffic jams. I steered clear of big cities during rush hour. I dodged bad weather. I didn't seek trouble and tried to stay away from it. For the first 2 weeks, I simply drove. I was a staunch supporter of the 15 free Nomad Parkings program and aimed to try them all by year's end. The issue was that at the speed I was going, I would soon burn through most of my fuel reserve. Although unplanned, I decided to look for an opportunity. It was mid-July, and I found myself in South Dakota. I hadn't planned it, it just happened. I had always heard of Sturgis, but since motorcycles didn't interest me at all, I never thought of visiting. At the third place I stopped, they offered me free parking, free meals, and a bit of cash if I stayed the whole month. With no bartending experience, I spent the next 5 weeks working in the kitchen. Handling the clippers was no trouble, and I even managed some time in the kitchen. It was a bit chaotic, but fascinating. I paid attention and learned a few things in that short time. The event lasted only 10 days, but it was very active before and after. I was busy every day, all day long. To say the least, it was exciting. By the end of the month, I felt capable of preparing most fast meals, but I wasn't a chef. After graduation, I worked for another week before moving west. 2 weeks later, I got a job as a cook at a campground near Cody, Wyoming. Free parking, free food, and cash, how could I complain? 3 months later, the weather began to turn, and I left, promising to return next spring. They were happy, and I gained a lot more experience and a little money for the road. The last sign I saw said something about Shoshone National Reserve, but I had no idea where I was. It was a beautiful day, and I turned into what looked like a designated parking area. It was a pleasant area away from the hustle and bustle of city traffic. Since I wasn't in a hurry, I decided to stay for a few days, or until someone kicked me out. That's when I met Micah. He approached the car while I was enjoying the sunset. For an old man, he looked a bit rough, but he didn't seem like a vagrant or an outcast. The coffee smells good. Do you happen to have an extra cup? I poured him a cup and pulled out a folding chair from under the RV. My name's Solomon, like king, and what's your name? I'm Micah, but I don't look like any king I know, he said with a wry smile. We sat and chatted about the weather, scenery, and other trivial things for a few minutes. Where's your car, Micah? I don't have one. I'm walking. From where? From home, he replied shortly, beginning to annoy and disappoint me. Is it close? Not really, not quite. I've been walking for 2 days. Are you hungry? Yes, I could eat. Do you have anything handy? I don't want to distract you. One thing led to another, and eventually, I fed Micah and he spent the night in the van. The next morning, we had a leisurely breakfast and chatted some more. Micah, does anyone know you're here? Oh yes, my granddaughter Atia, she knows where I am. Isn't she worried? Why would she worry? I always come home, he said. I didn't know what to say. You know, Solomon, maybe I should go home. Hey, taking a bath and shaving wouldn't hurt either, old man. 30 minutes later, Micah and I were on our way. The only city sign I saw said Lander, but I still didn't know where I was. I should have gotten a GPS navigator for the RV before leaving. Maybe I'll buy one for Christmas. After a long series of route signs, we finally stopped in front of a cabin house that seemed half stone, half log. It was, as they say, very picturesque. She stood on the porch waiting for us, as if she knew we would come, and I found out she did. Thanks for bringing him home. I was afraid I'd have to go get him, she said. She was tall with bronze skin and black hair. I couldn't say more because she wore loose jeans and a flannel shirt. You knew where he was? Of course, I always know where he is. I have a beacon sewn into a jacket. The battery lasts a week, but I usually retrieve it back after about 3 days. Is he mentally impaired? Is that why he wanders? No, he's fine. We've checked on him several times. He just likes to walk in the woods. He's been doing it for 2 years, and we've had no issues. Still, I sometimes have to fetch him. If I tried to restrict him in any way, we'd have problems. I extended my hand. By the way, my name's Solomon. I guess I spared you some trouble. Atia. Micah's my grandfather. I'm grateful to you for bringing him home, or did I already say that? Anyway, come in, I have hot coffee and cold beer, your choice. Micah disappeared somewhere. I assumed he was taking a shower and changing. We chatted for a while, and then Micah reappeared, freshly showered and shaved. Atia cooked lunch. It was the first time in months I ate at a communal table. It was nice. After lunch, Micah disappeared again, and Atia gave me a tour of the estate. They owned 250 hectares, but most of it was forested mountains, not suitable for ranching or farming. Still, it was beautiful. Atia and I seemed to hit it off. Before I knew it, I had dinner and was promised a hot shower and a proper bed for the night. A month later, I was still there. Winter was harsh, and Micah didn't like the snow. All winter he carved wood. He enjoyed crafting canes with unique patterns and handles. Of course, all the wood he used was from the property. I spent hours with him, weather permitting, searching for the exact pieces he wanted. What caught my attention as we gathered firewood was the large number of poplars across the property. I accidentally learned that carving on poplar bark had become very popular, but Micah was interested only in his canes. Atia was constantly writing romance novels. It seemed she had a talent for it. She had over 35 ebooks about corset rippers on several websites. She had gained many fans, and new novels sold out as soon as she published them. They were cheap, but she sold many. I made a living doing all the overdue repairs that the house and outbuildings desperately needed. It seemed like an ongoing project with no end in sight. Previous estate owners kept horses, so there was a large barn at the back of the house. However, Micah and Atia didn't care for horses, so the barn stood empty. I parked the house on wheels in the barn next to an ATV that seemed never to have been used. It took just half a day to repair the ATV and get it working properly. I had a plan, but I wanted to talk to Atia first. Atia, we need to talk. She was working at her computer. Oh no, she leaned back in her chair, resting her forehead against the back of her hand. Naturally, I stood there looking bewildered. Calm down, Solomon, it's a joke. I don't get it. Let me explain. In all romantic novels, when a couple has an issue, their conversation always starts with these 4 words. Usually, one of them is about to confess a wrongdoing they've done or are about to do. This significant revelation always leads to a rift between them. One is deeply wounded, while the other is usually indifferent or vengeful or something along those lines. It can have many, many consequences. Oh, I just wanted to borrow the ATV. Well, that's a letdown. I was hoping for more, she smiled. Want some beer? Micah was sitting by the fireplace carving wood. Atia set up a chair and covered it with a tarp so wood shavings wouldn't get everywhere. In the summer, she made him sit on the porch to carve. So why do you need the ATV? The next hour was spent explaining my plan to her. I had 3 distributors lined up, willing to buy all the poplar bark I could provide at wholesale prices. There was more wood on the property than we'd ever need. We only collected bark from dead trees, and there was enough acreage to keep us busy for many years. The only problem we faced was transportation. There simply wasn't a practical or economical way to deliver the bark. Atia gave me her blessing to do whatever I wanted. She even agreed for Micah to help me. Micah was glad to have something to occupy his time. The delivery problem was solved after the cold weather. Micah and I had some sunny days to start our small project. We began with the easily accessible trees. The biggest challenge was making so many trips back and forth to the barn. The utility cart wasn't spacious enough. Micah was more than happy to be the driver. Luckily, the barn was large enough to hold everything we managed to gather. As the barn filled up, we reduced the frequency of our collections. Micah and I both slept well. Atia and I never talked about ourselves or our life situations. I didn't want to intrude into her personal life, and I think she felt the same way. It had been quite some time since I'd left home, and I felt I should at least get in touch with my daughters. I no longer had a phone, so I had to borrow hers. Rose, it's your dad. They lived in a dorm room together, but I didn't know which one. Dad? Dad, is that you? Oh my God. Where have you been? We were worried sick. Mom's beside herself. I'm okay, sweetheart. Really, I'm okay. I just needed to get away for a while. I was afraid I might mess things up if I stayed. Didn't your mom explain this to you? Mom said she came home one day and was putting away groceries when you had a fit and ran out of the house. She said she hasn't seen you since and hasn't heard anything about you, and that's it, that's all she said. Yeah, she sat around for about 2 months doing nothing, then left and got a job at a store selling household goods. She works nights because they pay more, and she needed the money. She hasn't been paying for the house and can barely cover the bills. She said the bank is after her. Dad, what's going on? Rose, I could try to go straight and tell you what exactly your mom should be telling you about what happened, but it's a little late for that now. I don't want to be the bad guy, but your mom cheated on me. I don't believe it. How do you know, and with whom? She spent the second half of the day making love with her ex-boyfriend named Brad Mercer. While she was in his room taking a shower, he called me from her phone and bragged about it. When she came home, I sort of confronted her, and she just walked out of the room after that I left. What do you mean, sort of confronted her? She took a blow dryer with her when she went to meet him. Why would a woman take a blow dryer with her to meet an old friend? It was intentional, and she knows I know it. Dad, Iris, and I are going to visit her this weekend. We're going to get to the bottom of this. Can I call you on this number? No, it belongs to my friend. I'll block your number after we hang up. I'll call you in about a month, okay? Take care of yourself, bye. I didn't know it, but Atia was nearby and heard the whole conversation from one side, of course. That evening, after Micah went to sleep, Atia and I sat by the fireplace drinking wine and making popcorn. Yes, I also guarded the fireplace with logs. I'm sorry about what happened between you and your wife. Did you eavesdrop? Yes, I couldn't help it. I think I understand, but I don't want to intrude into your personal life. It's okay. She cheated on me, and I left. Nothing more to it. But now that it's out there, tell your story. Tell me what's a beautiful, energetic, young Jewish woman hiding out in Wyoming doing. Wow, you're wrong on 3 out of 4 counts. I'm not beautiful, I'm not energetic, and I'm not hiding out, but I am Jewish if that matters. You're dodging my question. She sighed. My husband cheated on me, and he got killed. He got himself killed. What does that mean? She leaned in and whispered in my ear, Micah killed him. Now I understood why they were in Wyoming. Micah was hiding, and she was just looking after him. Good setup. We never did figure out the best way to deliver the wood. I guess it's more accurate to say we lost interest in finding a suitable way to deliver the wood. I never made any attempts to sell the wood apart from initial contacts with a few distributors. I just sort of forgot about it. But Micah and I got into the habit of collecting it. It was useful for both of us. It was a sunny day, and we decided to spend our time clearing a few access roads to reach the hard-to-reach trees instead of collecting bark. By the end of the day, we were both completely exhausted and returned home to find the barn empty. Atia was smiling as we walked up to the porch. She had beers ready, although they weren't quite cold enough. What happened? She kept smiling. Right after you left, 2 guys from Smoky Mountain Timber came by in a truck. I showed them what was in the shed, and they wrote me a check for $4,800. They loaded up the bark and left before noon. I had no idea how much it was worth. I hope I did all right. Micah and I high-fived each other. It felt strange doing that with a 70-year-old man from New Jersey. Atia understood that everything was okay. I had no idea what it was worth, but I thought the money was decent. It was a good day. Now we needed to refill the barn. It was time to talk to my daughters. Hi Rose, it's your dad. Just thought I'd call to see how you're doing. I'm afraid not too well. Iris is here, so let me put you on speaker. How bad is it? Is someone sick? Mom's in jail. All right, you have my full attention. We talked to Mom after our last conversation. She had no idea about the phone call that guy made. She admitted she was there and that they had an affair, but she didn't know what he did or why he did it. 2 days later she was arrested, okay, but why was she arrested? She shot him 5 times. Is he dead? No, she used your old .22 caliber revolver with hollow point bullets. She shot him 5 times just below the belly button. It didn't kill him, but it definitely messed him up. The revolver held 6 bullets. Yes, that's the funny part. After she shot him, she called the police and while on the phone deliberately shot herself in the foot. That doesn't make any sense. We thought so too. Later she told us she did it to have something to remember him by. Should I come back home? No, she'll be out on bail in a couple of days. I don't think she really wants to see you right now. She regrets what she did but doesn't want to talk about it with me, Iris, or you. All right, well we'll leave it at that then. I'll call back later. Oh Dad, one more thing, we think she's going to file for divorce. She said you probably wouldn't do it, so she decided she would. She refused to discuss it further. The bank took back the house. Life goes on. Things pretty much settled down. Atia went back to writing, and Micah and I returned to harvesting bark. The weather was good, and we took advantage of it. Then I heard the talk from Micah. I didn't expect it. He surprised me during our lunch break. Solomon, my good friend, you're not pulling your weight. What are you talking about, old man? I do twice the work you do. That's not what I mean. I mean in the house. I don't understand. There's not much to do there. Atia takes care of almost everything, and when I try to help, she pushes me away. That's not what I mean either. Solomon, Atia is a grown woman in her prime. She needs the comfort of a man. She needs the comfort of a man. She needs strong arms and a warm body. You're the best, and in fact the only candidate for the job. It's time you step up and be her man. Micah, you're not suggesting what I think you're suggesting, are you? You want me to start dating your granddaughter. How do you know she even likes me? She's never said anything. Of course not, you idiot. She's waiting for you to make the first move. What if she rejects me? What then? I'll have to leave, and I don't want that. I like it here, and I don't want to mess anything up. Solomon, trust me, she won't reject you. Micah was, of course, right. There was no revelation or profound conversation that evening. Atia and I simply excused ourselves and went to her room. I moved in the next morning. It was different, yet everything stayed the same. She seemed happy, and I was thrilled. Micah smiled for a whole week. The weather was getting warmer. In winter, working with bark wasn't easy. When the weather was decent, we worked, otherwise, we relaxed. Micah was busy with his canes, and I tried my hand at carving bark. It was fun learning from online videos. I went through a lot of band-aids. Atia kept writing her novels. The next week, things came to a halt. Micah and I had prepared some trees for harvesting the following month. As we climbed the hill overlooking the house, we saw a state police car and 2 black sedans parked out front. We watched for a while as Atia talked to several visitors. She was very expressive, waving her arms and stomping her feet. I thought it was quite serious, but Micah seemed to be laughing. 2 men eventually convinced her to let them into the house, presumably to look around. I was pretty sure they weren't looking for me because I hadn't done anything wrong. I wasn't so sure about Micah. Micah, do you remember the place where we first met? He looked at me, smiled, and nodded. Can you meet me there in 2 days? He repeated his nonverbal answer. Micah took some snacks we had with us, all the water, and quietly disappeared over the hill. I hoped Atia had a fully charged GPS chip. I continued down to the cabin and played the role of the clueless hired hand. They were indeed looking for Micah. Atia had no idea how they tracked him to the hunting cabin. Besides the local police, there were 2 officials from New Jersey and 2 federal agents. Apparently, Aisha's ex-husband was an important person. I had no idea why it took them so long to find Micah. They intimidated Atia but had no interest in me. It was a relief. They left after a few hours, looking unhappy. Atia, however, was thrilled that I hadn't brought Micah back. She didn't ask me where he was, and I didn't tell her. We relaxed that evening and most of the next day. I suppose you and Micah arranged something? She phrased it as a question. I smiled and nodded, something I had recently learned from an old man. Do you have his passport? She smiled, stood up, and left the room. A few minutes later, she returned with an Israeli passport and an envelope containing $10,000. Throughout the day and evening, we checked several times to see if anyone was watching the house. There was no one. The next morning, Micah was right where he should be. He was hungry and a bit cold, but in good spirits. 50 hours later, I dropped him off at Regina International Airport. I offered to go with him, but he insisted it would be better if he did it alone. I was sure he was on a no-fly list in the States. After a hearty steak dinner, I got a room and a good night's sleep. The next evening, I returned home. I called my daughters and found out Marcy now worked at Munchie from 5 to 8. They didn't elaborate, and I didn't ask. The good news was I was no longer married, so some prison legal group helped Marcy get a divorce in less than 90 days. Reluctantly, I gave Rose my address. I really wanted that piece of paper and saw no harm in it since Micah refused to return to Wyoming for the wedding. Atia and I got married in Wyoming. Micah gave us the ranch as a wedding gift.